everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity, and we've got another Boomerocity friend returning to visit with us, and it's none other than Candice Night. This will be our third interview with her, so you'll remember her from the past interviews. And this time we talk with her about her new album called Sea Glass. Now, for those of you who may only be listening to this interview first instead of the other two that I've done with Candice, she is co-founder of Blackmore's Night with her husband, Richie Blackmore, who's, of course, a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, legendary guitarist. But Candice is the co-founder of Blackmore's Night and is a phenomenal vocalist, has an amazing voice, singer, songwriter, and a multi-instrumentalist. Absolutely amazing. She's a triple threat, if you will. And she sits with Boomerocity to talk about this new album, Sea Glass, and some of the compelling stories behind the songs. Let me just say that Candice has been through a lot, and she shares it with Boomerocity. And she doesn't, she's an intensely private person, her and Richie both. So I think you all, and especially women, will want to hear her story. I encourage you to, and you'll want to share it with your friends too, because it's encouraging, uplifting, frightening at times, but hey, but the big thing is, let's be clear, this album will leave you encouraged, will leave a song in your heart and a whistle on your lips. And I just think you're absolutely going to love it. So I encourage you not to just stream it, but to buy it. Go to Candice-Night.com, or you can go to Amazon. You can click on it on the Boomerocity page if you're accessing this video through the Boomerocity website. But you can buy this album wherever you order your music from, and I encourage you to do it to support our artists. So without, and before I forget, would you please hit like, and would you please subscribe if you're not already a subscriber? It won't cost anything, but it sure helps us out a lot. So without any further ado, here is my third interview with the amazingly talented Candice Night. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello there, Candice. How you doing?
Hi, good. How are you, Randy?
Hey, it's been a while. Let me get my earpiece in so I don't have any feedback when I edit here. I forgot to put that in. It's been a while. I was shocked to see that it's been 3.5 years. Was it something I said?
I've been waiting all this time for
Just
you
to get back at me.
Well, it's good to see you again.
Well, likewise. It's been a while, but it's always good to see you and talk with you. And how have you been over the last 3 years? I think you have a story or two to tell.
Oh my God. Well, it's nice to see you haven't lost your sense of humor as well. That's great. Keep that going. Yeah, I'll tell you what, honestly, it's a strange thing because when I put this album out, Sea Glass, my latest album, one of the interviewers, when I started doing the press circuit, said, well, it's been 10 years since your last solo CD has come out. And I said, oh my, like you just blink and time just travels. And I realized that that my children went from being toddlers to teenagers, and I'm now the shortest one in the household. And clothes go out of they outgrow their clothes, and I get them. So I've tripled my wardrobe, which is nice. A lot of it's sports gear for my son, and I'm not really up on that kind of stuff. But I have sports jerseys of everything now, so And of course, COVID ate 3 years basically out of everybody's life, which is insane. It feels like a bad dream that we went through, but at least, if nothing else, at least we all went through it together, so we can all kind of relate and commiserate and say, it's not like it was, a kind of thing where I say I went through it and nobody else can relate to it. Everybody went through it. And worldwide, not even a region, but worldwide. So, yeah, a lot of time has gone past and a lot of experiences I think we all went through. But we're still here. We're still here. We're still standing, and we're still making music, and you're still doing what you do best. And that's the most important thing. It brings you joy.
Yeah. Well, and I think during that time, I don't know about for you and your husband, but for me, it's if it wasn't for COVID, I probably it probably sped up what I would have eventually done anyway, and that's go on camera because the last thing I ever wanted to do is see my ugly mug out there. But everybody started doing Zoom, and I was invited to a group interview for an artist, Randy Travis, the country artist. And I thought, man, this looks kind of simple. And I started playing with it, and next thing you knew, it beat the heck out of transcribing audio all the time. So it's
So great
so I
invention, right? The mother, it's the necessity comes great inventions, right? So everything
that's
from
right.
Instacart to DoorDash to Zoom to like all of these things that we never would have thought of that we knew or that we needed or actually made our lives a lot simpler these days. So yeah, it's been so it brought some good stuff. So we got to say at least some good stuff came out of the bad, right?
Right. Have you guys seen any lasting changes because of COVID on your crowds, your music, how people participate in your shows now, anything like that?
Well, it was a strange thing because the last live show that we did in Europe at this incredible castle and the whole, I mean, it was so beautiful. There were just thousands and thousands of people there. The sun was setting. We had like belly dancers in the audience that were like dancing to every song and so many people dressed up in garb, and it was really amazing. And right after that show, Richie said, that it's such a great point to go out on. And we flew back overseas and he said, I'm just so tired because he did rainbow shows back to back with Blackmore's
Yeah.
night shows and it's a lot. So we got back home and he goes, I think I'm going to take a break for a little while. I think maybe, we'll take some time off the road. Like, cause we were going overseas every single year during the summer and doing that. And little did I know that he is that powerful that he put that break out into the universe and the whole world shut down for 3 years after that. I didn't realize he was that
Just for
powerful.
you guys.
Stop everything. Everything stopped in its tracks. And then it took forever, honestly, for things to get back on their feet too, because of course, even when people started going out and I mean, remember, like we have to really go back into our memory files on this, but there was so much fear and the quarantine, and you could not leave your house and you had to stay far away from people. And then after a while things started where you could leave the house, but you had to wear a mask, but you had to stay this far away from people, but you had to wear a mask there, but not there. And like all this stuff was going on. So, but still being in a crowded room with people was still terrifying. So the whole concert idea was that stayed on hold for a long time. And then because
Hmm.
everything was backlogged, everybody, once it started opening up, the floodgates opened and everybody wanted to get in. But those venues only had a certain amount of dates that they could fill. So everybody else was kept on hold. So that took years to rectify. So
Hmm.
it took a long, long, long time for my industry specifically to get back on our feet. One of the things that we did do while people were waiting patiently was, well, not only did we put out the album Nature's Light, because we actually had that all ready to go, but then, of course, distribution shut down and promotion shut down and the record company shut down. So, but we were able to get that back out in 2021. So that was nice. But we did a couple of live streams for people, just basically us. And like you said, when she went, well, this doesn't look so hard. Like you just press this button and it's a camera and it's a microphone and people can hear and see us. Really? Like, wow. And you'd reach more people like this than you would actually on the road. You could tour for a year straight but yet if you flip that switch and turn that camera on, you're reaching people in Brazil and Australia and Iceland and take a long time,
Hmm.
on planes and trains and automobiles trying to get to those venues and see them face to face. So that streaming thing worked out. So we did a few of those and we reached a lot of people with that. And I thought that was really great because people could write in on the comments and they could feel like they were here in our living room with us through a screen, but still they were here, like in our big room with us, just hanging out, me and Richie and doing our thing on acoustic guitar. And it wasn't a full band thing, but at least we could give them, some music and some release and relief from just being, in your house all the time and not being able to have that energy of live concerts. So we did that a couple of times, and that was nice to be able to do that. And now we're at the point where we are just honestly, the problem is I found with COVID, and obviously there's realms of problems, but um, I feel like it ate a lot of time out of, and I'm just talking on strictly on a time basis, out of the very young and the very old, and so like I said, my kids, they were masked and they had to stop school. And even when they went back to school, they were trying to do gym classes, breathing through masks. My son would come home, he'd be eating out of like he actually was chomping on the mask all day long. So that was hard to be, my daughter's singing in chorus and, like outside, even though it was freezing cold, but they'd still have masks and they'd still have to measure 6 feet away. And then they had like these cubicles of plastic that they were encased in. And it's interesting. It was an interesting thing for them to go through. I still bought yearbooks, and all the yearbooks, all the kids had masks on. So it's
Who was that?
like, I think it's your eyes. Was that you, honey? And that picture tear up. So it was a strange thing. But also, I mean, Richie's now 80 years old, and so whereas he had back problems and his arthritis condition was starting and things like that where it was hard for him to get from gig to gig and venue to venue before sitting in a car for a long time or on a plane for a long time or cancellations and delays and jet lag. It's hard enough on a person of
Yes, it is.
age, forget about older, and now he's older, and it's harder and harder, just
Yeah,
physicality is it comes weighing in on you. So, and he had I mentioned the other day he had a heart attack about a year and a half ago.
I
So
remember reading that. Yeah.
6 stints, and it's hard, but but he's also a younger 80-year-old than most 80-year-olds I know. So even though the medical issues are tricky and they're hard and they're jumping through those flaming hoops of life, you just keep jumping and keep jumping. And but now we're at the point where he's wherever we can drive to is where we do the show. And you can't do for his back problems and his gout and the rest of it. He can't do 2 shows in a row, so it's got to be a break in between, and then it's got to be
Yeah.
the travel to the next place. But you can't play too close to the next place. You have otherwise the promoters get upset. So you really got to clock
Right.
in. It's just weighing the logistics, and it's tricky and it's hard, and we're doing the best we can making everything work for everybody all the
Well,
way around. So
yeah. Well, I remember when the pandemic started lifting too. I don't know if you guys ran into this, but in my interviews with different people, they were talking about how as things were beginning to lift, trying to get schedules recoordinated because these guys would play with different groups, you
Mhm.
know, and they had so many different projects and they had it so finely tuned and balanced. And then the pandemic hit, and
Mm.
then the people they're playing for,
Yeah.
they get rebooked, but then they can't get their band members. It's just,
Yeah.
it took a long time for that to iron out. I don't know if you guys ran into that or not, but
A lot.
I
Well,
heard that a lot.
we have it more, I think, with our crew members because
Mm,
if you're not one of those that's on the road for a year, then it's harder to get crew members. And with our band, it's so finely tuned because we do everything from really intimate, ballady, sort of acousticy stuff to this wall of sound with some pop rock, and then Renaissance in between. So you can't just have one setting for everything all the way through and rely on the local sound people to know or the light people to know, so it's like it's a pretty intricate awareness of what we have to do. So that's why we tend to like to bring our own crew with us and our own sound
yeah,
system, our lighting stuff wherever we go, as opposed to using what's already there. It's easier for some bands that just do strictly rock or just one particular genre. They can use the local people that are there. Everything stays where it's supposed to be. They set it up in sound check and hands off, just let those faders fly and everything is fine, the way it is. But with us, it's, oh, we're switching up the set list. It's not going to be this anymore. It's going to be this. And only the sound guy who's been with us for a million years can watch what we're doing and read it and go, oh, that's got to be on this setting now. And so
yeah.
those little intricacies definitely come into play with what we're doing for sure. Luckily, we have our band is we use the same people with our band every time. Sometimes it's tricky to get them because they'll book different gigs in different places. So I just call it puzzle piecing things together. We'll set out like we just send out like a spreadsheet and say, when are you available? Just put your availabilities in here, and like whatever works for, we have to make it work for everybody.
Yeah.
Because we can't like even trying to, you couldn't even get like somebody to come in and learn the 60 songs that we might possibly pull from or might possibly not, and like have an extra violinist just step in or keyboard player. Like they've got to know
Mhm.
this stuff backwards and forwards. So it's interesting, but we've got some great
It-
professionals and good people, and we're very lucky that way.
well, I got a great suggestion for you. I think you and the family and the band should rent a couple really big cabins near here where I live, and then you can hub out of here to go hit Knoxville, Chattanooga,
Uh,
Atlanta, Asheville,
there you go.
Greenville,
Uh,
Lexington. It's all, 4 hour drives in any direction or less. And that'll knock out several towns. We get to see you, and then you can go back home. That's just a
you
suggestion.
just answered all of my problems. Why didn't we do
There.
this call
And I'm not
like
even going to charge you guys for it. I just want to see you live, So
what's the percentage that I've got to send to you? Do you take Venmo?
no, yeah, no, a signed album. That's all I want.
Oh,
I'm
you got
cheap. I'm
it.
a cheap date. I'm a cheap date. So
I love it. Those are my favorite kinds.
now, the last time we talked, it was about your Winter Carols album, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to ask about that, and then we'll get into this new one of yours. How did that album do for you guys?
It's great. It's great. We love it. I feel like we add to it every couple of years because there's so many great holiday songs and holiday, there's just such a plethora of amazing, amazing traditional songs that we're able to, kind of get our fingers into and update and change and rearrange. And so we still have like a whole list of stuff that we want to do on there. But right now, I think we're up to double album standard on that. So but it's, I mean, it's our favorite time of year every year. We convert the whole entire house into this magical winter fairyland with all the rainbow Christmas lights. We have this rainbow Christmas tree that lights up the water. It illuminates the water out here, and it's the only one in all the darkness where you see those beautiful rainbow lights. And it's it always we play it basically year round. So those songs never get old. We just it's part of our heart, and we
Yeah.
love. As
Well,
a
I
matter of
love this.
thing. It's a funny thing. I don't know if you're a wrestling person or not. Like if you ever were watching like WWE, it used to be WWF when I was a kid. That just shows how old I am.
Well, it shows how old I am. That's how I
Right?
didn't know they changed their name.
I
So
know, I know. I found that out when we were working with WWF as the World Wildlife Fund over in Germany, and we like did a whole thing with them to raise funds for orangutans in Borneo. And I said, "Oh, WWF, we have back in America," and they're like, "Not anymore," because apparently there was a whole legal battle, and it's so now the WWE has been there for a while. But it's funny because during COVID, I wound up, I was just bored one day in the house. I was going through some social media and I found that there was a wrestler who actually lived local to us in Long Island. I didn't know him, who discovered winter carols while in quarantine and COVID. He couldn't get back to his family who was living in Florida. And he apparently he lives like Christmas all year round. He has a Christmas room in his home all year round. So he's got like, the presents under the tree and the Christmas lights and the Christmas tree up. And he discovered winter carols and he was tweeting out about it. And I'm like, who is this guy that has like a couple of million followers on Twitter? And that's like tweeting out about it. And it turned out it was, his name is Mick Foley, and he is like in the wrestling, like on the Hall of Fame for them. And he had like the three faces of Foley, Mankind, like all this stuff. So it wound up being a lasting friendship because of COVID and because of winter carols
wow,
that whole thing. So, music touches everybody, all kinds, all the way around the world. So it's great to see
that's
that.
right. Well, here where I live in the Smoky Mountains, there's a hotel that is it's Christmas theme year round. In
Oh,
fact, it's called the Christmas Inn. In fact, I've been through it a couple times, and you remember the is it the Christmas story where they had Ralphie and put your eye out and the
yeah, oh,
leg lamp.
yes, of
The leg
course,
they've
of
got a
course.
few of those leg lamps throughout the hotel.
Oh my God,
Kid you
that's
not.
hilarious. I
And
love
then
that.
and then the same people that own that own across the road, the main drag here in Pigeon Forge. They have this year-round Christmas decoration play, and it's massive. It's very, very large. Very, I mean, the best of everything in there. I don't know how many trees they have in there, all sorts of different ornaments and all that kind of stuff. So you guys have to come through and check it all out. I think you'll love it.
You know
So
what? About 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I took the kids to Pigeon Forge, believe it or not. And so I was not too far from you, I think. And did you know that they still have a Magic Quest there? I don't know if you know the Magic
yeah,
Quest.
I live about 5 minutes from there.
Have you ever played Magic Quest?
No, I have not.
Did you know that I am the Princess of Magic Quest? And if you walk in there, you will see me on the walls in there in Magic
I
Quest.
did not know that. Hold
Well,
it.
now
You
you
know
know I
what? I
got
think you
play.
mentioned it the last time we talked, so I've got to go in there and check it
I
out.
can't
So,
because I went in there and I'm like, I wonder if I'm still in here. And sure enough, I walked in, and the second I walked in with my kids, they all went, "Oh my gosh, it's Princess Candace!" And so, which was very nice to be, recognized as royalty. Doesn't happen often these days, so I'll take it where I can. And yeah, we walked through, we did our little magic wand stuff, and it was great. So they definitely still have. It's a freestanding building where they have Magic Quest
yeah.
that have me up on the walls and stuff over there. So
Yeah, I
that
know
was.
right where it is. I played in the miniature golf thing in front of it, I think it is, or somewhere around there. So
Oh, you
there you
got to
have
get
it.
inside. You got to get inside. It's
Yeah.
fun. Fun to do.
So there's the Country Tonight venue right there near it somewhere. I've lived here for 11 years. And I still get everything mixed up, but it's a I don't know 1600 seat auditorium. There's some smaller ones around here. Knoxville has it. I'm telling you, you guys can come here and knock a show or two out and it hub out
Um,
of there to the other areas and a lot of fun places to play at as well. So
Sounds
that
good. I
that
would
would be
love to.
great.
I feel like we need to start driving down the coast because, right, and we've hit a lot up here, northeast, which I love, and it's always fun to do that. But yeah, I feel like we need to. So you'll be that travel. We've got to like travel a little bit, play, travel a little bit, play. So I've
Yeah,
got to work at those logistics, and maybe I can
yeah.
twist my husband's
Or if
arms
you
to.
have one place in one area and just spoke out, I mean, bands
Hmm.
do it all the time, but for the
Yeah.
size of venues you guys shoot for, that could work out pretty. Because there's a lot of them down here in the South that, I don't know what size of venues you guys shoot for, but they're small, medium, and large, of course. So,
Yeah, I mean, we like the intimacy. So it's usually like 800, 2,000 seater we wind up doing. And
mhm.
because that way we get to still like see people one on one, like face to face
Yep,
and be
yep.
able to connect with
Do the
them.
meet and greet and all that, but
Nice.
well,
Yeah.
I've listened to your album. I love it. And I watched, Carol sent me the EPKs on all that. And man, there's some stories there. Well, I guess my first question for you is how much of the stories that you shared in those EPKs went into the making of this album or the writing of the songs of them, the substance of the songs, the subjects,
It,
and then all of that. How did because I want you to be able to share your story to fans that will watch this, but how much of it was album and how much of it was just this trauma and just learning from it all, that
yeah.
kind of thing.
I find that when I think one of the hardest things for me to do is to write strangely enough, I know this is going to come across weird, but from a happy place because I find that when you're happy you're like so caught up in enjoying that emotion, but melancholy and the things that kind of shape and change you from those perspectives of like sadness and experiences that kind of bring the trauma that has so many dimensions to it. It's like so many shades of blue. So you're able to kind of take all those different things and craft them and meld them into hopefully something that it's kind of very therapeutic that kind of brings you to, even though you're going through that, you come out the other side a changed person, but maybe in a happier place because you're working, if you're not healed, at least you're working towards that goal.
Hmm.
And I always
Hmm.
find that being creative and sitting and just being in those places, allowing yourself to go through those things, go through those emotions, not shutting them off and ignoring them or trying to heal yourself super fast because trying to do that is just putting a band-aid on stuff that doesn't really heal. But sitting in that silence and absorbing it, trying to understand it, and going through it, I think is the key. And And I find going through it is what brings me to the song process, because those songs, when I'm writing them, they wind up helping me in a therapeutic way. They are able to help me get through it. They're able to help me get through emotions, get through maybe some realizations, reflect back on different things, and get to the other side. And but when you get to the other side, you wind up having this musical entity that it's like journal pages, things that you deeply, deeply felt and deeply experienced. And it doesn't mean it stops, and it doesn't mean it's over, and it refreshes it when every time you hear the song, but at least it brings you to another perspective and another place where you're able to put that out into the world and say, hey, I went through this. Maybe somebody else can use this as a catalyst for healing for themselves as well, because you're not alone. I felt alone going through it, but I know that I'm not alone. But I feel like we all feel that, and when you're going through that pain, you kind of have to be in that alone place, just because it's so personal that you don't feel like anybody else feels it the way that you do. Nobody
Yeah.
else is walking in your shoes the same way that you are. So putting these songs out there, it keeps you very vulnerable. It shares your life experience. You're fragile, but it helps. I think it helped me. And from what I'm reading from other people and getting messages from other people that have gone through similar, if not exactly the same things that I went through, in their own way, I think a lot of these songs are helping them too. So it's good to hear that.
What, and I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask, because of that, for exactly how you put it, there has to be stories you're hearing from others that maybe, even though you've gone through this, what they say touches you back. Is there anything like that that you can share?
So many things. I mean, in the space of the time period that it took me to compile these songs, obviously I lost people that were so important in my life, that were foundation stones in my world, and that experienced every milestone of my life with me. My father obviously was a huge, huge part of my life. And it still feels like a complete hole in my heart every day. And I keep waiting for that to get better, but it's not easy. And every accomplishment, I wish he was just right here with me. I
Yeah,
feel like he is, but it's a different world, that physical world compared to you know, the transcendental world of being
right.
on the side. And but so many people that I have read what they went through as well, with them either just recently losing a family member, a mom, a dad, somebody super close to them, a best friend, and another half, their wife or their husband. Some of them are saying it just happened recently. Some of them are saying it happened decades ago, and they still feel it. And so these songs still touching their hearts, and still, they're finding that there are ways for them to, like, it brings tears to their eyes. But again, it's that sort of going through that emotion, that hard, hard emotion, but also feeling that healing process. And that healing process is never easy. It's not like you just wake up and one day you're done. You've put it in a box and you've moved on. It doesn't happen like that. It's two steps up, one step back. Sometimes the opposite direction. Sometimes it's two steps back and one step forward. But it's slow growing, but it hopefully it happens for all of us. And we're even if that hole doesn't completely heal, you start to try to focus on the magical, wonderful, amazing memories and moments and stories that you shared, and realize how
Hmm.
blessed you were to have these people in your life, instead of just feeling that loss. So I'm hoping that
Hmm.
shift, really, really makes a difference.
You shared in your EPKs that about the health challenges you had, and I don't know how deep you want to go into that, so I'll leave that entirely up to you. But there were, I mean, it's one thing to get a diagnosis of something, but you had to find out while you were out of country and all
Oh
that.
my
I'm watching this, I'm going, you know, yeah, it's terrible to get the call and you're in the comfort of your own home, but your mom telling you FaceTime me when you get to the hotel. I was like, oh my God. I mean, that had to be, I can
God.
only imagine what you felt like here.
Yeah, and it was, it's the kind of thing where I stay on top of my health, like, religiously. Like, I know there's people in my home that are counting on me 24/7, and I got to be here. And if that cog is taken out of the machine will grind to a halt,
Falls
because
apart. Yep.
they need, right. So So I stay on top of all my stuff. And I was going to a dermatologist, and I have to be honest, like it took me, I'm a very personal person. So like I don't usually share everything with the world. And
Hmm.
it took me to tell my best friends 2 years it took me to actually tell them this stuff was going on. And when they told me, I told them, and they were just like, why did you not talk to me about this? I'm like, because I was going through it. I was going
Hmm.
through it, and I don't look at my stuff as gossip or as rumor or as, and if,
Right.
nobody could have helped me go through it. I had to go through it myself. And so, I'm a Taurus, I'm stubborn like that. And so, but I'm very like I keep things very close to my heart, and if and when I'm ready to share, then that'll be the moment I do. And a lot of times I'm not ready to share. So but of course this happened back in 2000, well, it started in 2018. So it's taken me this long to publicly
Wow.
talk about it. But but again, now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, wow, if even one person hears the story and they go, oh, maybe I should check into this, and it helps that one person, that's better than me keeping it close to my heart and not telling anybody.
Yeah.
So basically what happened, and this is as my dad, it was for a year I watched him and we helped him in his world, but he got that diagnosis of cholangiocarcinoma, which was bile duct cancer. And he'd been fighting different kinds of cancers for a while. But this was the one in that last year that really just took everything from him with the chemo and everything, just took it
Hmm.
his everything from him. So that last year with him was really hard. And he passed in December of 2018. Now in October of that same year, so I still had him around for 2 months. My son actually noticed something on my back and then said, Mom, I don't know what's going on back here. And of course I can't see it because it's like, way back here.
Right.
So I'm relying on my kid to tell me what's going on. And I said, oh, let me double check on that. So I made an appointment for the dermatologist who I saw every couple of years for, mole mapping and making sure everything. And this guy, doctor I'd had over a decade, said, no, it's a sebaceous cyst. There's no specifics, right? He goes, it's a sebaceous cyst, and he injected anti-inflammatory into it. And he goes, go to see a surgeon, and they'll just take it out when the cell wall is not inflamed anymore. And I'm sure this is a lot of information, medical information, but this is what happened. So I made an appointment with a surgeon. It takes 6 weeks to get in. Went and saw that guy, and he go another second doctor, and another one who's been in the industry for decades. And he said, nope, still inflamed. Come back in 6 weeks' time. Well, these two medical professionals who had been in the industry for decades bounced me back and forth between surgeon and dermatologist from October of 2018 until April of 2019. When my husband
Wow.
said, I don't like the way this looks, I'm coming with you, and this needs to be biopsied. It's changing. I don't like it. And Richie came with me to the doctor and said, you need to biopsy this. And the doctor said, no, 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 don't worry about it. I'm telling you, this is exactly what happens with sebaceous cysts. Now, as we know, you don't tell Richie no, 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 because Richie is very justice based and
I
very
can
heavy.
imagine that look on in his eye when he was told that.
It
Yep.
did not go down well. And they got into a very heated discussion. I'm gonna say it's discussion. Let's just use that word to keep it kind. And Richie said, "You need to do this." And especially when Richie cares about you, he's going to make sure that whatever needs to be done is done. And the guy said, all right, fine. He finally caved. But again, keep in mind, this was 6 months of back and forth. So sure enough, he does what he has to do and then patches me up. So we did rehearsals here at the house. I get on the plane and they say no news is good news. I didn't hear anything for a while from that guy. So I figured, oh, everything is fine. I get on the plane. My mom's watching my kids. We land in Denmark. And she calls me and she goes, because she's on my HIPAA form. So she goes, you need to call me as soon as you get to the hotel. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm thinking it's my kids because my mom's with my
Right.
kids. Like, what happened? So I get to the hotel and she goes FaceTime me. And my mom is old school. She doesn't FaceTime. So now I'm even more concerned because screens are, for an older generation, they don't get into the screen thing. So I FaceTime her and she's got tears in her eyes. And I'm like bracing myself. What happened to my children? What's wrong? What do I need to do? And she said, I heard from the doctor and it is cancer. And I'm not talking basal cell and I'm not talking squamous. We're talking, this was sebaceous carcinoma, which apparently is a very rare form of cancer and aggressive. And it usually appears on your face somewhere. Mine happened to be on my back. And I said, what do I do? They said, you needed to be home. Like, you needed to get it out like yesterday. Yesterday. They've been bouncing me back and forth for 6 months.
Mm.
So back and forth, two different doctors. So luckily, oh, and a side issue of that incidental finding was apparently that I have something called Muir-Torre syndrome. Now, Muir-Torre syndrome is another very, very, very rare thing. Richie goes, I knew you were one in a million, but
You'd think you could win the lottery, right? So,
some sort of lottery. I don't know if I want to bet on this one. So it turns out that that is a genetic predisposition for certain kinds of cancer. So it's like Lynch syndrome for women that have gone through breast cancer and stuff like that. It's like that umbrella, except it's for colorectal cancer and genitourinary cancers. So it's 80
wow.
percentile for one and 60 percentile for the other. So they upped my upper endoscopy, colonoscopy because my dad had that. So I was doing it every 5 years. Now I've got to get it
Mhm.
done annually. Every single year I got to get this done. So tubes going everywhere for. And genitory was 60 percentile. So my genetic counselor at Sloan, who I got, said she actually kicked me right between the eyes. She said, you know what? I think you should get a complete hysterectomy. And she goes, I would hate. And I said, but no, my organs didn't do anything wrong. And she said, listen, it's preventative. And she said, your body makes cysts and I can't monitor what's going on in there. Like you can't biopsy stuff on your ovaries. And she said, I would hate for your kids to lose you to something preventable.
Mhm.
And how do you say no to something like that?
That's right.
So I had to have that done. And but while we were overseas, getting back to that, so 2019, so right after the first Rainbow Show, uh, big giant festival, and all this stuff was going on, and Richie found a card in his wallet from the head of urology in Nuremberg University Hospital, and he called this guy up. Card just happened to be in his wallet. So it's
Go
amazing how,
figure.
right? How
Wow.
fate works. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I called the guy up. The guy said, fly to Germany and I will get this taken out right away. So we took a detour, wound up in Germany. He laid me on my face, did a football cut incision, cleared the margins on either side, but he didn't
Wow.
clear underneath. And so I said, what do I do now? And he said, you got to wait 4 to 6 weeks to heal. Try not to move around a lot. So they packed me with ice every single night because I couldn't lay on my back because I had this incision in my back. And I'm trying to like clap and get everybody involved with all the show, like get everybody
Mm-hmm.
in all this pain with my back. That was hard. But as soon as it was that 4 to 6 weeks, my back healed. And as soon as that 4 to 6 weeks came, I landed here. I was here back in New York for one day and went right into the city at Sloan. And my scar went from this big to this big.
Whoa.
And yeah, they removed a lot. They went underneath into the muscle wall. I had drains. They had like it was
My
a
goodness.
deal, but they had to make sure that they cleared the margins all the way around and they did a tracer lymph node and now I'm in maintenance where I've got to, just stay on top of everything, which I do. I've got to stay on top of my health in every way, shape, or form. And I suggest everybody do that. I thought I was by listening, to those two doctors but thank goodness my I can honestly say my husband saved my life with that because it's very, very rare and it's very aggressive. And if he didn't push me and push that doctor to do that biopsy, that stuff spreads. It spreads and it spreads fast and spreads like wildfire, and you can't hit the rewind button.
Nope.
So, and I had just watched my dad go through absolute hell. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Wow.
So now I'm ready to share the story with the world. But that's what goes on tour and stuff that you don't, the stuff that happens behind closed doors when nobody knows what's going on. And,
Yeah.
everybody thinks, so these people step on stage and everything's wonderful in their world and they can't possibly have anything going on. We're human like everybody else and we're all going through something. Everybody's going through something. So,
And at the same time, because of where you and your husband are at career wise, you've got everybody, looking at you all the time. You're being scrutinized. Where a bozo like me, no, I'm just I'm invisible. You guys aren't. So it's hard to maintain some privacy. But you said something earlier that I want to see if this is tied together, and that is you mentioned that when you guys got home, that Richie said that you want to take some time off. You didn't want to, and it was so. This is all kind of like at the same time, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, exactly. So he came home and decided like for himself, he wanted to take that time to take a break. I mean, he'd been on the road since he was 16 years old, every year of his life,
Hmm.
ever since then. And living out of hotels. A lot of us think that that's really luxurious because, we look at it from a sort of like a vacation perspective.
Right.
But I tell you the ideas that this guy has were, I mean, it makes perfect sense because having been with him for so long, 35 years this year and traveling with him the way that we did for such a long time. And he had it way, way harder before he met me, where he would be on that road for a year and a half at a time or doing two gigs at once, like one here and
Hmm.
one here and travel the same day. And Japan today and then Australia tomorrow and then England the next day. And so you learn a lot as you go through and you go, I can't do this routing. Like it's physically impossible. He had a nervous breakdown on tour in the 70s where he was walking down the hall of a hotel and all of a sudden he broke down, and just couldn't do it, just could not
Yeah.
do it. And it's very taxing. It's very hard on a human being to do that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of things that people don't see too is, which he actually has in the rider of the hotel, you have to ask such specifics, like, is there going to be maintenance or any kind of construction that's going to start at 7 o'clock in the morning over my head with the drilling? And because, when you finish your show, you get home, you finally fall asleep at 2 a.m. and then they wake you up at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning with drilling or next to the ice
Hmm.
machine where there's a party that goes on until 3 o'clock or you're by the pool or by the maids' quarters or the loading deck and these are just things that are like, you wouldn't even think about. But like I said, most people look at traveling from a vacation perspective, but when that's
Yeah.
your life and that's your home and that's where you need to unwind and have your rest because you got to give 110% on stage the next day and put the travel in there too. It's
That's
it's
right.
hard. It's taxing on you, and the older you get, the harder it gets. So.
Yep. No, I hear you. We view it as our one little trip, and and you guys have to think, all right, am I still in, Tallahassee or am I in Atlanta now or something,
Oh,
So
I
I
remember
can
the
only
first time I went
imagine.
on the road, very first time I went on the road with Richie, and he flew me over for the Deep Purple tour in 1993. And I just remember it, and it was one of that's back when Czechoslovakia was still Czechoslovakia. Like, I'm not saying
Hmm.
that because I don't know, like it was still just one country. It wasn't Czech and Slovakia at that point. And
Hmm.
so they would fly in on a jet to Poland and fly back out the same night and then play Czechoslovakia and then play here. And it was one country like every day and everybody traveling separately. And it was crazy. And I just remember trying to keep up with what was going on. And I was the only American. So I had to go through a separate line during customs where all the band members were like going through English customs. And there's me like as the only American girl, like separated from everybody. And I just remember having like this little pouch of coins from all these different countries. Like I didn't know there was Deutschmark, this before the euro, Deutschmarks and then francs. And then it was just, I couldn't keep up on even the exchange rate anywhere we went. And at one point, the customs official who looked at my passport and he just, very sternly looked at me and said, all right, well, so where are you staying? And, where did he said, where are you staying in our country? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, where did you just come from? I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, where do you go after this? I'm like, I'm not sure. I must have looked like a complete lunatic, but literally, I didn't have the itinerary on me. My brain was fried from just all I knew was you get in
Just
a car,
travel.
right? You follow that guy. The tour manager knows where you're going, stick with him. but that tour manager is English, and he's over there on the line with the guys who really matter, like the band members. And there's me, like, I don't know. I must look like a nut. I'm surprised they didn't just throw me in jail at that point, thinking that I was smuggling something in. But I'm like, that guy right there, he knows. He knows he's over there on that line. So luckily they let me in. But oh my goodness, what an introduction to the world of touring and traveling and trying to keep up with these guys. It was insane and intense and amazing and crazy and wow, just wow. A lot.
Well, putting this album together, where there, I mean, you've worked on a lot of albums, so it's not obviously not like it was the first time you were in the recording studio, but I'm sure there's still things that pop up or materialize, either good or not so good, that surprise you in the making of a record. Was there anything like that with this one?
Well, it took me a while to put this one together. So I had like different aspects of creating each one of the songs on here. Every one of them I feel like came from a different place and from a different time. And it was 10 years of really kind of garnering all of these pieces of sea glass, if you will, which wound up
Hmm.
being the songs. Each individual song on the album sort of reminded me of a separate piece of sea glass because it really, I have these collections of sea glass around my home, and finding each one of these treasures that had been worn and kind of just polished by the elements and returned for someone to be like, oh, it's now treasure. So each one of these songs came from a very different place, and even the production elements of it, a couple of them were done while we had our producer Pat Regan here, and he was working on some Blackmore's Night songs, so I was able to kind of book him for some stuff. Richie is very adamant about starting the Blackmore's Night stuff at 3 o'clock every day, so I would sneak over and be like, Pat, want to come in at 1? Maybe we could do some stuff. Like, all right, I'll meet you down here in the basement where the studio is. It's downstairs in the basement.
But bill the other band for the time, right?
Oh, I cover my own expenses. Don't worry. Right down the middle. But so he and I were able to work on a couple of things like that, which was really helpful. Um, and then on the times when Pat wasn't here, I found this really great producer, engineer producer, multi-instrumentalist who was so easy to work with. And his name is Brendan Keenan. He's right here on Long Island. At a studio. It takes me about an hour to get to that studio. It's always nice when you have the studio in your house and you could just roll out of bed in your pajamas and go downstairs and,
Yeah.
work with the producer there. But having said that, I would basically just like get my little voice recorder and sing the melody line over it and then do the keyboard parts and like send that over on another voice memo and ship all of that over to Brendan and say, okay, now here's what I have in mind. I want this kind of intro. What do you think about this? Can we make it like that? And then before I even went, I'd book the studio time, go in and meet with him. And I always it's a strange thing. I like to cook, so I'm always like, it's almost like baking a cake or creating something like that. It's like you add this spice, but luckily when you're creating music, you can like take the spice out if it doesn't work. When you're baking something, everything gets
Hmm.
thrown in and then you're stuck if you don't like it. With something like this, it's like, okay, you know what? What if we use like a harp sound over here and then fade that out and put this and so we bounce off of each other and we're able to take things out and put things back in um and so it just makes it fun. It makes it a fun creative process. So I basically go in with the idea in my head and then he takes the idea out of my head and then expands on it. I'm like, that's great, but let's take that out and put this in instead. And he's like, that's great, let's try this. And we get so excited and so enthusiastic about it and it makes it fun. It makes creativity fun. And I think that's the sounds are actually exactly how I would want them to be, if not more and as what you hear on the album. So I'm very, very happy with the way they all came out.
What was the biggest difference working on this album compared to anything else that you've worked on?
Well, when I'm doing the Blackmore's Night stuff, the creativity as far as the writing the songs is really different. Richie will always come up with the musical idea first. He's usually in the den, playing on the acoustic, and so he'll come up with an idea and I'll be in the kitchen doing dishes or laundry or something. And he'll be like, hey, can you come in and hum this melody over it? And, this is the ideas. And, um, and then we kind of build from there. So the basic idea of the song, of the music is already there. And then I take those ideas. He might say, it kind of reminds me of this, and I'll use it as a jumping off point for lyrics. Or I'll just drive around, while I'm doing errands and have that idea, the musical idea that he put down in my head. And then I take those pictures that the music is painting and craft it into lyrics. And I come back with him and I'm like, listen, this is the idea that I have in mind. What do you think? And so it's very much like a partnership like that. When I'm writing for my own stuff, it just all comes out somehow as like one big flow of lyrics and music together. So I'll just start singing. Once I come up with the lyric idea, I just start singing a melody along with it. So like
Mhm.
with the title track Sea Glass, I literally was walking along the beach, picking up pieces of sea glass and like singing part of that song. And the beginning of that melody, where it's like I used to be whole, that actually came from, and this is the first time I'm saying this, is from a lot of those things and being with the surgeries with the medical stuff. It wasn't just, it was a big emotional thing, but it's also physical, where like pieces of me have just been removed and taken out, and parts of me are like completely gone and never to return. And so there's so many layers in a song like that. And so I know when I recorded it, and then it was basically like the producer being like, are you sure you want to leave this at 6 minutes? And then the record company being like, are you sure you want to start with a 6 minutes song? Like, not really a usual thing for people to do. And I'm like, I do, because it's so true and it's so raw and it's so honest. And I can't imagine taking any part of it out because it was the full story. It's just like
Yeah.
everything was in there at that moment. And it was really important. And I think that's why, it was important to name the album Sea Glass. I think that's why the symbolism of sea glass was so important within it. And it's really it's just it's everything that it stood for.
I know that songs are like kids, and I'm sure you and Richie have not picked your favorite kid because you love them both equally. But songs, same way. So I quit asking that question. What's your favorite song? But I do ask, what what song on the album would you point to as a calling card for the rest of the record? For anybody that is just getting turned on to you, or maybe a fan that hasn't heard the album yet, and you say, you can listen to this one first, and if you like that, you're going to love the rest of the record.
That I can do for sure. And especially, by the way, having a girl and a boy, the energies are completely. So I can say like the tug of war as to like what is happening in this household, completely like different. So yeah, I get that with the kid thing, but whew, so I'm 100% going to say unsung hero, honestly. Like I think that is would be a great song for people to listen to. That was basically based on my mom. I wrote it at 2 o'clock in the morning. My mom is this person who literally, like we used to say, you just change her batteries and once a month, and I don't know when she sleeps. I don't know how she does what she does. She started as a school teacher, always knew one of those people always knew what she wanted to do, always knew what she wanted to be, became a school teacher. She helped special education kids, like special ed kids.
Hmm.
She was working in BOCES, worked all the way up to teaching teachers how to teach in St. John's University. She was parent and student advocate. She she fought school districts so hard and school boards so hard for the sake of the students when they were being wronged, when their parents were being ignored, when they weren't being listened to, when they were being passed through the system just to get them to graduate when they couldn't read. And she's like, stop, this is not okay. I grew up having my mom's students in my house until 11 o'clock almost every night because she'd be sitting on the couch with them, teaching them every single day of our lives, and just so she could be hands-on with all of them. And she's the one who, when Richie was going through some hard things with management in the 90s, and he and his management went separate ways, and there was a lot of legal battles that went on for that, which I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about, but there was a lot of stuff that went on, which he won. But anyway, but so we made, I called her. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do here. This is not my realm. This is not, I said, could you make a phone call for us? And she did. She called a lawyer and she was so well versed and she was so 100% loyal. And we knew we didn't have to watch our backs and knew we didn't have to worry about anybody stealing. And we knew that she was going to represent him to the true capacity and not for any alternative motive or any other reason.
Hmm.
And she started doing that for us back in the 90s. And this is a woman who, when we would get to, we could get into to Italy and, in the middle of the night in the rain and find out that there was no posters and nobody knew where we were in town. She would get posters from the promoter and be out there with staple guns and duct tape with
Wow.
a PA out there in the middle of the night, putting posters up on places, letting people know where we were, like just so hands-on. She's brilliant. She rewrites the contracts for the lawyers, so Richie has 100% of ownership, much more so than he ever did when he signed things saying he was a work for hire for decades because he didn't know what he was signing. I mean,
Yeah.
the typical musical, musician faux pas that you do because you're on the road and you're just trying to keep up, and someone puts a stack of paper saying sign here in front of you 5 seconds before you step on stage. Horrible.
Yeah.
Um, but we knew that we could count on her. She's a one-woman show. I don't know how she does what she does, but she does it. She has yet to explain any of it to me. But like literally checks the accounting, stays on the record company side of it, deals with the publishers. And always, when we wind up getting a bad name for anything, she's the brunt of it. She's the one who's putting the words out there that basically is our decision or Richie's decision. I can't do this or I won't do this or whatever. And this is why she has to be the bearer of bad news and winds up getting 100% of the backlash. It's an incredible thing. And on top of that, still puts her family first, her kids first, her grandkids first.
Wow.
Um, she's just an amazing, amazing, amazing woman. And but having said that, I wrote that for her with her in mind 100%. And then as I wrote that, I realized when I listened back to it that there are parts of me in there too. And then every woman I play it for is going, "Oh my God, that's my song." Because we are going 24/7. I come downstairs after putting the kids to sleep and I'm doing the laundry and I'm doing the dishes and I'm making sure that the groceries are okay and I got to pre-cook this for tomorrow and make it got the doctors when, and like
Yep.
you're doing it all. And like I say to Richie, it's like, we don't do it, for credit or for thanks, or we do it because it's amazing what you can accomplish when no is not an answer you can give. You just keep going, you just keep going.
Yep.
And you always put yourself at the last of the totem pole, but yet if you pull out that bottom part, everything falls. So you just got to make sure it's all right. And if you're doing your job right, even though you're exasperated and you're exhausted and you've got nothing left sometimes with what you're doing, your kids are happy and they're healthy and they
Yeah.
make memories and you're blessed. And every moment is exhausting, but it's also invigorating. And you still look back on those moments like, wow, we created this memory. This was a blessing. You know what I mean? It's like this
Hmm.
crazy, crazy journey in life. And you just keep going. And it's whether it's for your husband or your other half or your kids or the people that are counting on you, and you just keep going. And so that's why I said, we're the unsung heroes. It's not just specifically for one person. It's literally for everybody out there, that is doing it. And we're all doing it. We're all doing it, and we're all
Hmm.
doing it all the time. And we don't question it. You just keep going. And then even when it keeps going, like for the, even the service people that are involved with this, I started like looking at people who were, um, nurses or doctors or, like soldiers or firemen or policemen. Like there's they're doing it. They're just doing it. They're just doing it. They don't
Yep.
doing it because of credit. They're doing
Yep.
it because they do, because they're amazing and because the world would be different, so much different if they didn't do it. So you don't
Well,
often think,
I think in your case, though, just to interject here for a moment,
yeah.
it's an object lesson for everybody. While you are those kind of people, and we all give sacrificially, there's nothing selfish about making sure you take care of yourself. Because I use the air mask analogy. When the steward the people on the plane, they'll go through the whole thing about, when the mask drops, whether they tell us, if you're with young children, still put the mask on you first and then the
Yeah.
kids. Otherwise, you're not going to be any use or any
You can't
help
help.
to the
Right.
kids.
Right.
So we
That is
do, it's hard for us to realize this sometimes, but there is that self-care that everybody must do at some point in order
yeah.
to still show love by way of service to those
True.
around us.
That's true. It is. I mean, I find it's even helpful, even if I take a moment just to open up, like a
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me, but oh, there you are.
Oh, there.
It
You
froze up.
Oh, I saw that. I wasn't looking, and then when I looked back, you were frozen. Yeah, it's so it is tricky because finding those moments to carve out for yourself time wise, that's I think that's a big part of the tricky situation. So I'm
Yep.
finding that I step out on my deck, I take a big deep breath of fresh air, or like plant a little flower box out there or something, get my hands dirty. Try to ground myself a little bit because right before someone else goes, Mom, can you? Mom, can you? It's like, yes, okay. Let's do it. What do we got to do now? Keep going. But like I said to Richie, nobody thanks their hands for doing everything that they're doing, that are being there for them. You just expect them to
Hmm.
do it, expect them to be there. And I feel like we kind of become the hands, of the body, or
Yeah, yeah.
we're just doing everything we can do.
A little off topic. I've got just a couple more questions here. Did I read correctly that you and Richie started a podcast, or are you guys still doing it? If you are, or what?
Oh, okay. Now I know what you're talking about. So it's called Tales from the Tavern.
Hmm.
It's not a podcast per se, but every once in a while, because keep in mind, Richie's what? Can you hear him? He's talking from the balcony up there.
No,
He's,
I can't hear him. Tell him
I
get
said,
on camera.
yeah, come on down, come talk. I said every once in a while, and he yells out, "I get drunk." So like that's the peanut gallery. I feel like I'm in the Muppet Show with the two guys like who used to talk in the gallery, Rich. So every once in a while, I can get him to get on camera or streaming. Now, keep in mind, he doesn't have a cell phone. This whole world of technology is still a mystery to him. So getting him to do this it takes a lot of explaining and a lot of just trust me, I'll do this, I'll make it work. And then I've got to learn all the technological stuff. So I'm doing my best. And of course, reading the words coming in that are this big, and I'm trying to like read what the questions are, and I've got to put my glasses on. And anyway, so what we're doing every once in a while, and it's not on a scheduled thing, but I can get him to, after he's gone out with his friends and had a few drinks and relaxed and is in storytelling mode, because he has such great stories. And I want him to write a book, but he won't write a book. So I said, well, what's the next best thing? Let's try to get him to do a streaming thing. It's not exactly a podcast, but and nobody knows when it's going to happen. I try because he doesn't know. Like he'll just be like, "Let's do it." I'm like, "Let's do it." Great. So I never know when it's going to happen. I can't let people know in advance. So I'm like, "He'll be on now." So yeah, we'll do a streaming thing, and then people will write in, and we do it on either Instagram or we're doing it on Facebook sometimes. And then I actually sent the stuff over, like the live stream that we do, to our guy who does his YouTube page, and then he I think cuts it into segments so people can see it in segments. So
Ah,
it's always
very
living
cool.
out there on YouTube and on Instagram. So I don't know when it's going to happen, and it's not scheduled, but it does happen. It's called Tales from the Tavern, and he tells a
Yeah,
story.
that's right. I couldn't remember the name and it just popped in my head. But as far as the book deal goes, there's a great guy. He's worked with several artists and helping them with their books, including Ken Mansfield, who was on the rooftop concert with the Beatles and all that.
Oh, wow.
This guy is phenomenal, very, very good. He works well with the people who are wanting to put a book out. And so if you
Oh,
ever get the urge, just let me
what's his
know and
name?
his
What's his
name, he's a good friend of mine. His name is Marshall Terrell,
Okay.
and he's done books on, gosh, everybody. In fact, he's working on one now with the Nelson twins, Rick Nelson's two boys.
Oh,
And
okay.
he's done work with, like I said, Ken Mansfield. He was with Capitol Records, and Ken himself put out several books. And
Oh,
Marshall's and he's working with good dear friend of mine, Nancy Andrews, who was Ringo's ex-fiance before he and Barbara got together. So they're
okay.
working on another book together. So I mean, this guy's no slouch. It's not like somebody that just is aspiring to be a writer. This guy is very well accomplished. Look up his books. He's, in fact, I interviewed him. There's two interviews of him with him on my site. You can check him out and see how he is. But he did a great book with Greg McDonald, who was a protege of the Colonel,
Oh,
Elvis's
yeah,
manager.
Elvis, of
And
course.
he worked with him on the book. And I was supposed to interview Greg, but he got stage 4 cancer and died before we could interview. So Marshall and I talked about it, but it's a great book. Very, it opened my eyes to a lot of things, answered a lot of questions that people assume they knew the answers to. But Marshall, he's the real deal. I can't
Oh, that's
recommend him
great.
enough. So
Thank you. All right, I will definitely check into that. That sounds great. Yeah, Richie, he's funny because he keeps saying he's like, I have all of these stories, but not all of them are what people might expect or what people might want to hear. Like anybody who's been in the
record
industry.
him. You should just record them and let somebody work with it then. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
I
I say you
agree.
should. I don't want to sound like one of those people trying to tell a guy that knows more than I've ever forgotten more than I'll ever know, but it would be kind of nice if he recorded those things and let
I
somebody else
totally
do the heavy
agree.
lifting for him. So,
Well,
but
listen, if he listened to, if he listened to what I say, we'd be on vacation on an island somewhere. So, he listens to
well, he
it.
should. Hey, he's the head of the house, but you're the neck that turns the head, right? So,
Still
so
working on that.
final question. What's next for you guys? What you going to do now that the album's out and all that? What's on your agenda?
Yes. So the next thing is, I believe, is to get Pat Regan back in to finish up. We have about 4 songs already finished for the next Black Mars Night album. So that will be coming out hopefully, I want to say the beginning of next year. And it's just to continue on doing what we're doing. We might be doing some shows in the fall. We're in discussions right now with the promoter agent as far as that's concerned, and
Mhm.
just doing what we're doing. So looking forward
Well,
to
good
more
deal.
physical future.
Well, Candice, as always, it's a lot of fun talking with you. And thanks for sharing all that you have. And I know fans will love hearing this. And I'll let Carol know when this thing posts. Probably be next week when I get it out there. It'll be on my site and on the YouTube channel, and it'll be a podcast on all the podcast platforms. But you've been
Great.
gracious with your time, and I wish you and Richie much more health and time together, and
Thanks.
savoring life. And my door is always open to you guys. Anytime you want to get the word out on something, I'll do my part to help make that happen.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Randy. It was great seeing you again.
Likewise, take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.